True story, my earliest videos on YouTube were shot on a potato. Here's John to show us how to grow your own potatoes. And you know what? It doesn't take up a lot of space.
French fries, hash browns, potatoes au gratin, mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, latkes, scalloped potatoes, potato soup, potato bread. Whoa, potatoes have a really big range in the kitchen. Hey guys, welcome back to Home and Garden for Mere Mortals. I'm John from Nailed It, and today we're gonna be making a potato box. If you're unfamiliar with a potato box, it's a really easy thing to make and can yield a lot of potatoes in a really tight space. But there's a trick to growing potatoes successfully in a potato box. Most people who try growing potatoes for the first time in a potato box aren't successful. So I'll show you the simple construction of the potato box, and we'll talk about strategies and things to think about when you actually try growing potatoes in a potato box. All right, I'll start by using cedar for my construction of my boxes, and I'm gonna be using a pine 2x2 for the pins that are gonna lock the entire box in place when we stack those boxes on top of one another. I'm using cedar because it's weather and insect resistant. Now you could use pine if you have some dimensional lumber laying around for cost benefit, or you could use redwood because redwood carries the same benefit of being weather and insect resistant to prevent that kind of damage if you're using this year after year. Start by cutting your boards to 24 inches. You'll need 24 of these to make a 6-layer box. This won't make a perfect square, but that's okay. If you're a perfectionist, you can measure out the boards to make sure they create a perfect square. Next, cut the 2x2s into 4-inch pieces. You'll also need 24 of these. Now, I'm using these 1-inch risers so that I can see exactly where my pins will fit when I drill them to the board. Just like that. So that's it for construction. Pretty easy, right? So here's a general rule for how these boxes should work. You want to take your potato eyes and bury them in the bottom box with soil. Once the plant gets 12 inches taller than the bottom box, you put the next layer on and fill that with soil. Each new layer should produce another layer of potatoes. Now comes the hard part, successfully growing potatoes in one of these boxes. Now there's quite a few things to consider. Like any plant when gardening, weather is the #1 thing to consider. Potatoes will typically yield less or maybe not even produce at all unless the weather gets down to about 60 degrees at night. In warmer climates, you probably want to start your planting around March. Another good indicator is when the soil reaches about 40 degrees but not freezing. In my case, I live in Southern California near the coast, so the best planting season would be March, April, or May. With regards to variety, you want to find out what's been successful in your region for a long time. Now in Southern California, UC Davis actually published a report showing the most common varieties of potatoes in our area. So in my case, I'll be planting one of these 4 varieties: White Rose, Russet, Centennial, or a Norgold Russet. I would recommend talking to your local nursery. A lot of times they have really good information about what kind of potatoes grow really well in your area. And remember, just because you can buy it at the market doesn't necessarily mean it grows very well in your area. Now it turns out that soil is where most people get the potato box wrong. They try and use regular soil from their garden, and a lot of times potatoes may not like that. Using the wrong soil will severely inhibit your potato's ability to grow in your potato box. Using slightly acidic compost mixed with vermiculite or perlite works the best for potatoes. The perlite and the vermiculite give a little wiggle room in the soil so that the potatoes can expand and grow inside the box. Ultimately, this will reduce compaction, it'll improve aeration, and it'll retain moisture inside the soil for the potatoes. I've personally used perlite and vermiculite in many of my planter boxes, and it's often overlooked by beginner gardeners. Watering for potatoes is pretty simple. you want to make sure that they're moist but not wet, and you want to make sure that they never completely dry out. The vermiculite or perlite that we talked about earlier really helps with drainage and retaining some moisture. Last up is harvesting. So you want to make sure you harvest the bottom layer of potatoes first. And you can do that by unscrewing the front board, kind of digging out some of that dirt and pulling those potatoes out, put the dirt back in, put the board back on, and move up from there. Now you want to make sure you harvest the bottom layer of potatoes 2 to 3 weeks after the vines have flowered. For the uppermost layers, you're going to want to harvest those 1 week after the vines have completely died back. That'll give you the best yield for the topmost layer of potatoes. Thank you for watching this edition of Home and Garden for Mere Mortals. If you like what you see, come check out my channel, Nailed It. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like this, give it a thumbs up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to make this, a giant cookies and cream chocolate bar. No, you don't want to eat this. It's actually soap, homemade soap. And I don't know much about making homemade soap, so I'm going to bring in another DIYer to show us how.